This is Joshua Goodwin. He's the vice chair of the Upstate Young Republicans. He says he's voting for you on Sunday.
Good. Let's not blow it.
Good evening, Senator.
Good evening.
And welcome back to Greenville.
Thank you.
My question for you is regarding the Charleston shooting. Myself and many South Carolinians were devastated by the hatred of racism. And as a leader, I would like to know, how would you simultaneously address the issue of racism, yet unify us as a country?
Yes, sir. That's an important question. First, let me begin by saying that the entire country was inspired by the way South Carolina, and in particular the people impacted at Mother Emanuel Church, reacted to this shooting. I think the images of these family members who had lost loved ones saying on television, "We forgive the killer," had an impact on the country that was profound. And I think it says a lot about South Carolina, but it also says a lot about the role that faith plays in the state. And if you ask people about it, they will tell you that the church was at the center of how South Carolina responded, not just to that shooting, but to a previous police shooting and to a flood that was a 1,000-year event. Now, you talk about race relations. It's a difficult issue in this country. I can tell you, and I know a lot of it is centered around law enforcement and police departments. So let me begin by saying very clearly, I know for a fact that the overwhelming majority of the men and women who serve us in law enforcement are incredible people who every single day put their lives potentially on the line for our safety and for our security. But I also know that there are communities in this country where minority communities and the police department have a terrible relationship. I personally know someone who happens to be a police officer and a young African-American male who told me that he's been pulled over 7, 8 times in the last few years and never gets a ticket. What is he supposed to think? He gets pulled over for no reason, never gets a ticket, no one has any explanation for why he's being pulled over. What is he supposed to think? So I also know that in this country there is a significant number, particularly of young African-American males, who feel as if they're treated differently than the rest of society. And here's the bottom line, whether you agree with them or not, I happen to have seen this happen, but whether you agree with them or not, if a significant percentage of the American family believes that they are being treated differently than everyone else, we have a problem. And we have to address it as a society and as a country, because I do not believe we can fulfill our potential as a nation unless we address that. I'm not sure there's a political solution to that problem, but there are things we can do. For example, one of the reasons why you see both educational and academic underperformance, not just in the African American community, but also in the Hispanic community, is because a disproportionate number of our children are growing up in broken homes, in dangerous neighborhoods, living in substandard housing, and forced by the government to attend a failing school. A child that's born with 4 strikes against them is going to struggle to succeed unless something breaks that cycle. We've seen things that work. In New York City, Jeffrey Canada and the Harlem Children's Zone has shown us what works. You get involved in the lives of children, and you begin to address those strikes against them, and you can see the same results you would get anywhere else in the country. So I do believe as a society we have to confront this issue in a responsible way, because ultimately, if a significant percentage of the American family feels that they are locked out of the promise of America, we will never be able to fulfill our destiny as a great nation.
If I could, just a quick follow-up. Just wondering, on a personal basis, have you ever felt the sting of racism?
You know, let me tell you a couple things about my parents. Were extraordinary people. My parents raised me to believe that it didn't matter that they came from Cuba and that he was a bartender and she was a maid, that there was nothing we couldn't do. I do recall as a child during the Mario boat lift, growing up in Las Vegas, that some of the neighborhood kids, older kids, one day were taunting my family, saying, "Why don't you go back on your boat? Why don't you go back to your country? Why don't you leave here?" I didn't know what they were talking about. I was 7 years old. I said, "What boat? My mom doesn't even swim." So I was afraid of water. And my parents had to sit me down and explain the Mario boat lift is going on. People are really upset about it, and they're hearing this stuff. And don't blame the kids. They must be hearing it from somebody. That's why they're repeating it. So that disturbed me as a young child. But I got to tell you, for the most part in my life, I never saw that as a reflection on America. I saw it as a reflection on those kids and what they were saying. What I give my parents a lot of credit for is that they never raised us to feel that we were victims. They always raised us to believe that our destiny and our future, we lived in the one place on earth where if you worked hard and you persevered, you could achieve no matter what. That doesn't mean I don't deny that there are people in this country that have had a different experience. And we need to recognize that. You know, if you look back at the history of this country, we have some blemishes in our history that I believe even to this day we're fighting through. But what I think is extraordinary about America is that we have fought through that we are a nation of perpetual improvement. If you look at how far we've come as a country since the 1960s, if you look at how far South Carolina has come from where it is today to where it was 30, 40 years ago, here's what's simply amazing. In my campaign for president today, I got the endorsement of a governor of Indian descent who endorsed a presidential candidate of Cuban descent, and tomorrow we'll be campaigning alongside an African-American Republican senator. All three are doing that here in South Carolina. That says a lot about the Republican Party.